The Bounds of Reason. Chapter 8.
"Both legs,"
Yennefer said, wiping her hands on a linen cloth.
"And probably something with his spine. The armour on his back is dented as though he'd been hit by a pile driver. He injured his legs with his own lance. He won't be mounting a horse for some time, if he ever mounts one again."
"Professional hazard," Geralt muttered.
The sorceress frowned. "Is that all you have to say?"
"And what else would you like to hear, Yennefer?"
"That dragon is unbelievably fast, Geralt. Too fast for a man to fight it."
"I understand. No, Yen, not me."
"Principles?" The sorceress smiled spitefully. "Or ordinary commonplace fear? The only human feeling that wasn't eradicated in you."
"One and the other," the Witcher agreed dispassionately. "What difference does it make?"
"Precisely." Yennefer came closer. "None. Principles may be broken. Fear can be overcome. Kill that dragon, Geralt. For me.
"For you?"
For me. I want that dragon, Geralt. In one piece. I want to have him all for myself."
"So, cast a spell and kill it."
"No. You kill it. And I'll use my spells to hold back the Reavers and the others so they don't interfere."
"You'll kill them, Yennefer."
"Since when has that ever bothered you? You take care of the dragon, I'll deal with the people."
"Yennefer," the Witcher said coldly, "I don't understand. What do you want with that dragon? Does the yellowness of its scales dazzle you to that degree? You don't suffer from poverty, after all. You have numerous sources of income. You're famous. What are you about? Just don't talk about a calling, I beg you."
Yennefer was silent. Then, finally, twisting her lips, aimed a powerful kick at a stone lying in the grass. "There's someone who can help me, Geralt. Apparently it's... You know what I'm talking about. Apparently it isn't irreversible. There's a chance. I could still have... Do you understand?"
"I do."
"It's a complex operation, costly, but in exchange for a golden dragon. Geralt!" The Witcher remained silent. "When we were hanging on the bridge," the sorceress said, "you asked me for something. I'll meet your request, in spite of everything." The Witcher smiled sadly and touched the obsidian star on Yennefer's neck with his index finger.
"It's too late yet. We aren't hanging now. It's stopped mattering to me, in spite of everything."
He expected the worst. A cascade of fire, lightning, a smack in the face, abuse, curses. He was surprised just to see the suppressed trembling of her lips. Yennefer slowly turned away. Geralt regretted his words. He regretted the emotion which had engendered them. The limit of possibility overstepped, now snapped like a lute string. He looked at Dandelion and saw the troubadour quickly turn his head away and avoid his gaze.
"Well, we've got the issue of knightly honour out of the way, my lords," Boholt called, now dressed in armour and standing before Niedamir, who was still sitting on a stone with an unvarying expression of boredom on his face. "Knightly honour is lying there groaning softly. It was a lousy idea, Lord Gillenstiern, to send out Ike as your knight and vassal. I wouldn't dream of pointing the finger, but I know whom Ike can thank for his broken pins. Yes, I swear we've killed 2 birds with 1 stone. One was a lunatic, insanely reviving the legends of how a bold knight defeats a dragon in a duel, and the other, a swindler, who wanted to make money from it. Do you know who I'm talking about, Gillenstiern? What? Good. And now our move. Now the dragon is ours. Now we, the Reavers, will sort out that dragon, but by ourselves." "And the agreement, Boholt?" the Chancellor drawled. "What about the agreement?" "I don't give a shit about the agreement." "This is outrageous. This is lèse-majesté." Gillenstiern stamped his foot. "King Niedamir, what about the king?" Boholt yelled, resting on an enormous 2-handed sword. "Perhaps the king will personally decide to take on the dragon by himself. Or perhaps you, his faithful chancellor, will squeeze your belly into a suit of armour and go into battle. Why not? Please do. We'll wait, my lord." You had your chance, Gillenstiern. Had Ike mortally lanced the dragon, you would have taken it in its entirety. Nothing would have been left to us, because we hadn't helped, not one golden scale on its back. But it's too late now. Open your eyes. There's no one to fight under Cairngorm's colours. You won't find another chump like Ike.
That's not true,
the cobbler Sheepbagger said, hurrying to the king, who was still busy watching a point on the horizon of interest only to him.
Oh, King, just wait a little, and our men from Bearfield will be arriving. They'll be here any moment. To hell with the cocksure nobility. Chase them away. You'll see who is really brave, who is strong indeed, and not just in word.
Shut your trap,
Boholt said calmly, wiping a spot of rust from his breastplate.
Shut your trap, peasant, because if you don't, I'll shut it so hard I'll shove your teeth down your throat.
Sheepbagger, seeing Kennet and Gar approaching, quickly backed away and hid among the Bearfield constables.
King, Gillenstiern called. Oh, King, what do you command?
The expression of boredom suddenly vanished from NIEDAMIR'S face. The underage monarch wrinkled his freckly nose and stood up.
What do I command?
He said in a shrill voice.
You finally asked, Gillenstiern, rather than decide for me and speak for me and on my behalf. I'm very pleased, and may it thus remain, Gillenstiern. From this moment, you will be silent and listen to my orders. Here is the first of them. Muster the men and order Ike of Denesley be placed on a waggon. We're going back to Cairngorm.
But sire, not
a word, Gillenstiern. Madam Yennefer, noble lords, I bid you farewell. I've lost some time on this expedition, but have gained much. I have learned a great deal. Thank you for your words, Madam Yennefer, Master Dorigere, Sir Boholt, and thank you for your silence, Sir Geralt.
Oh, King, Gillenstiern said. What do you mean? The dragon is in our grasp. It's there for the taking. King, your dream...
My dream?
NIEDAMIR repeated pensively.
I do not have it yet. And should I stay here, then I might never have it.
But Mariore, and the hand of the princess?
The Chancellor waved his arms, not giving up.
And the throne, King. The people there will acknowledge you as...
I don't give a shit about the people there, as Sir Boholt would say.
NIEDAMIR laughed.
The throne of Mariore is mine anyway, because in Cairngorm I have 300 armoured troops and 1,500 foot soldiers against their 1,000 crappy spearmen. Do they acknowledge me? They will have to. I'll keep hanging, beheading and dismembering until they do. And their princess is a fat goose, and to hell with her hand. I only need her womb. Let her bear me an heir, and then I'll poison her anyway, using Master Sheepbagger's method. That's enough chatter, Gillenstiern. Set about carrying out my orders.
Indeed, Dandelion whispered to Geralt. He has learnt a great deal.
A great deal,
Geralt confirmed, looking at the hillock, where the golden dragon, with its triangular head lowered, was licking something grey-green, sitting in the grass beside it with its forked scarlet tongue.
But I wouldn't like to be his subject, Dandelion.
And what do you think will happen now? The Witcher looked calmly at the tiny grey-green creature, fluttering its bat-like wings beside the golden talons of the stooping dragon.
And what's your opinion about all this, Dandelion? What do you think?
What does it matter what I think? I'm a poet, Geralt. Does my opinion matter at all?
Yes, it does.
Well, I'll tell you then. When I see a reptile, Geralt, a viper, let's say, or some other serpent, it gives me the creeps. The vileness disgusts and terrifies me. But that dragon...
Yeah?
It's pretty, Geralt.
Thank you, Dandelion.
What for? Geralt turned his head away, and with a slow movement reached for the buckle of his belt, which crossed his chest diagonally and shortened it by 2 holes. He lifted his right hand to check if his sword hilt was positioned correctly. Dandelion looked on with eyes wide open. Geralt? Do you mean to...
Yes, the Witcher said calmly. There is a limit to what I can accept as possible. I've had enough of all this. Are you going with NIEDAMIR or staying, Dandelion?
The troubadour leaned over, placed his lute beneath a stone cautiously and with great care, and then straightened up. I'm staying. What did you say? The limits of possibility? I'm bagging that as the title of a ballad.
It could be your last one, Dandelion.
Geralt?
Hmm?
Don't kill it. Can you not?
A sword is a sword, Dandelion. Once drawn.
Please try.
I will.
Dorogere chuckled, turned towards Yennefer and the Reavers, and pointed at the receding royal caravan. "Over there," he said, "King Niedamir is leaving. He no longer gives orders through Gillenstiern's mouth. He is departing, having demonstrated good sense. I'm glad you're here, Dandelion. I suggest you begin composing a ballad."
What about?
"About?" The sorcerer drew his wand from his coat. "Master Dorogere, sorcerer, chasing back home the rabble who wanted to use vulgar methods to kill the last golden dragon left in the world. Don't move, Boholt. Yarpen, hands off your battle-axe. Don't move a muscle, Yennefer. Off you go, good-for-nothings. Follow the king like good little boys. Be off. Mount your horses or wagons. I warn you that if anybody makes a false move, all that will remain of him will be a burning smell and a bit of fused sand. I am serious."
Dorogere,
Yennefer hissed. "My lord sorcerer," Boholt said conciliatorily. "Is this any way to act? Be quiet, Boholt. I told you not to touch that dragon. Fables are not to be killed. About turn and scram." Yennefer's hand suddenly shot forward, and the ground around Dorogere exploded in blue flame, seething in a dust cloud of torn turf and grit. The sorcerer staggered, encircled by fire. Gar leapt forward and struck him in the face with the heel of his hand. Dorogere fell to the ground, a bolt of red lightning shooting from his wand and harmlessly zapping out among the rocks. Beanpole sprang at him from the other side, kicked the sorcerer to the ground, and took a backswing to repeat the blow. Geralt fell among them, pushed Beanpole away, drew his sword and thrust flat, aiming between the breastplate and the spalder. He was thwarted by Boholt, who parried the blow with the broad blade of his two-handed sword. Dandelion tried to trip Gar, but ineffectively. Gar clung to the bard's rainbow-hued jerkin and thumped him between the eyes with his fist. Yarpen Zigrin, leaping from behind, tripped Dandelion, hitting him behind his knees with the haft of a hatchet. Geralt spun into a pirouette, evading Boholt's sword, and jabbed at the onrushing Beanpole, tearing off his iron bracer. Beanpole leapt back, tripped and fell over. Boholt grunted and whirled his sword like a scythe. Geralt jumped over the whistling blade, slammed the hilt of his sword into Boholt's breastplate, fended him off, and thrust, aiming for his cheek. Boholt, realizing he could not parry with his heavy sword, threw himself backwards, falling on his back. The Witcher leapt at him, and at that moment felt the earth fall away from under his rapidly numbing feet. He saw the horizon going from horizontal to vertical. Vainly trying to form a protective sign with his fingers, he fell heavily onto the ground on his side, his sword slipping from his numb hand. There was a pounding and a buzzing in his ears.
"Tie them up before the spell stops working,"
Yennefer said, somewhere above but very far away.
"All 3 of them."
Dorogere and Geralt, befuddled and paralysed, allowed themselves to be bound and tethered to a wagon, silently and without resisting. Dandelion fought and cursed, so he received a punch in the face before he was tied to the wagon. "Why tie him up, traitors, sons of dogs?" Sheepbagger said, walking over. "They should be clubbed to death at once and be done with it." "You're a son yourself and not a dog's," Yarpen Zigrin said. "Don't insult dogs here. Scram, you heel." "You're awfully brave," Sheepbagger snapped. "We'll see if you're brave enough when my comrades arrive from Bearfield. They'll be here any moment. You—" Yarpen, twisting with surprising agility, considering his build, whacked Sheepbagger over the head with his hatchet. Gar, standing alongside, gave him a kick for good measure. Sheepbagger flew a few feet through the air and fell nose first in the grass. "You'll be sorry," he yelled, crawling on all fours. "I'll fix—" "Lads," Yarpen Zigrin roared, "kick the cobbler in the cobblers. Grab him, Gar." Sheepbagger did not wait. He sprang up and dashed towards the eastern canyon. The Bearfield trackers followed him, cringing. The dwarves, cackling, sent a hail of stones after them. "The air's freshened up already," Yarpen laughed. "Right, Boholt, let's get down to the dragon."
"Hold on."
Yennefer raised a hand.
"The only thing you're getting down to is the bottom of the valley. Begone, all of you."
"Excuse me?" Boholt bent over, his eyes blazing ominously. "What did you say, most honourable Madam Witch?"
"Follow that cobbler," Yennefer repeated. "All of you. I'll deal with the dragon myself, using unconventional weapons, and you can thank me as you leave." Had it not been for me, you would have tasted the Witcher's sword. Come now, quickly, Boholt, before I lose my temper. I warn you that I know a spell which can make you all geldings. I just have to raise my hand.
Is that so? Boholt drawled. My patience has reached its limits. I won't be made a fool of. Beanpole, unhook the shaft from the cart. I feel I'll also be needing unconventional weapons. Someone is soon going to get a damn good thrashing, my lords. I won't point the finger, but a certain hideous witch is going to get a bloody sound hiding.
Just try, Boholt. You'll brighten up my day.
Why, Yennefer?
The dwarf asked reproachfully. Perhaps I simply don't like sharing, Yarpin.
Well now, Yarpin Zigrin smiled. That's profoundly human. So human it's almost dwarven. It's nice to see familiar qualities in a sorceress. But I don't like sharing either, Yennefer.
He hunched into a short, very rapid backswing. A steel ball, appearing out of his pocket as if from nowhere, whirred through the air and smacked Yennefer right in the forehead. Before the sorceress had time to come to her senses, she was suspended in the air, being held up by Beanpole and Gar, and Yarpin was binding her ankles with twine. Yennefer screamed furiously, but one of Yarpin's boys threw the wagon's reins over her head from behind and pulled them tight, the leather strap digging into her open mouth, stifling her cries.
Well, Yennefer, Boholt said as he walked over, how do you plan to turn me into a gelding now, when you can't move a hand?
He tore the collar of her coat, and then ripped and wrenched open her blouse. Yennefer shrieked, choked by the reins.
I don't have the time now, Boholt said, groping her shamelessly to the cackling of the dwarves. But wait a little while, witch. Once we've sorted out the dragon, we'll make merry. Tie her firmly to the wheel, boys. Both little hands to the rim, so she won't be able to lift a finger. And no one's to bloody touch her yet, my lords. We'll sort the order out, depending on who does a good job on the dragon. Beware, Boholt,
Geralt, arms tied, said softly, calmly and ominously.
I'll follow you to the ends of the world. You surprise me, the Reaver replied, just as calmly. In your place, I'd keep mum. I know you, and I know I have to take your threat seriously. I won't have a choice. You might not come out of this alive, Witcher. We'll return to this matter. Gar, Beanpole, to horse.
What bad luck, Dandelion snapped. Why the hell did I get mixed up in this?
Dorigere, lowering his head, watched the thick drops of blood slowly dripping from his nose onto his belly.
Would you stop staring? The sorceress screamed at Geralt.
She was writhing like a snake in her bonds, vainly trying to conceal her exposed charms. The Witcher obediently turned his head away. Dandelion did not.
You must have used an entire barrel of mandrake elixir, and what I can see, Yennefer, the bard laughed. Your skin's like a 16-year-old's, damn it. Shut your trap, whore son, the sorceress bellowed. How old are you actually, Yennefer? Dandelion asked, not giving up. 200? Well, 150, let's say. And you're behaving like...
Yennefer twisted her neck and spat at him, but was wide of the mark.
Yen,
the Witcher said reproachfully, wiping his spit-covered ear on his shoulder.
I wish he would stop staring.
Not on your life, Dandelion said, without taking his eyes off the bedraggled sorceress.
I'm here because of her. They may slit our throats, but at least I'll die happy.
Shut up, Dandelion, the Witcher said.
I have no intention of so doing. In fact, I plan to compose the ballad of the two tits. Please don't interfere.
Dandelion, Dorigere sniffed through his bloody nose. Be serious.
I am being bloody serious.
The dwarves heaved Boholt up into the saddle. He was heavy and squat from the armour and the leather pads he was wearing. Gar and Beanpole were already mounted, holding huge two-handed swords across their saddles.
Right, Boholt rasped. Let's have at him.
Oh, no, said a deep voice, sounding like a brass trumpet. I have come to you. From beyond the ring of boulders emerged a long snout shimmering with gold, a slender neck armed with a row of triangular serrated projections, and behind taloned feet. The evil reptilian eyes with their vertical pupils peered from beneath horned eyelids.
I was tired of waiting in the open,
the dragon Vilentre Tenmerth said, looking around. So, I came myself. Fewer and fewer challengers, I see.
Boholt held the reins in his teeth and a longsword two-handed.
That's not,
he said indistinctly, holding the strap in his teeth.
Still fight, Kyle.
I am, the dragon said, arching its back and lifting its tail insultingly. Boholt looked around. Gar and Beanpole slowly, almost ostentatiously, calmly flanked the dragon. Yarpen Zigrin and his boys waited behind, holding battle-axes.
Ah!
Boholt roared, striking his horse hard with his heels and lifting his sword. The dragon curled up, flattened itself to the ground, and struck with its tail from above and behind, like a scorpion, hitting not Boholt, but Gar, who was attacking from the side. Gar fell over with his horse amid a clanking, screaming, and neighing tumult. Boholt, charging at a gallop, struck with a terrible blow, but the dragon nimbly dodged the wide blade. The momentum of the gallop carried Boholt alongside the dragon's body. The dragon twisted, standing on its hind legs, and clawed Beanpole, tearing open his horse's belly and the rider's thigh with a single slash. Boholt, leaning far out from the saddle, managed to steer his horse around, pulling the reins with his teeth, and attacked once more. The dragon lashed its tail over the dwarves rushing towards it, knocking them all over, and then lunged at Boholt, en route, seemingly in passing, stamping vigorously on Beanpole, who was trying to get up. Boholt, jerking his head around, tried to steer his galloping horse, but the dragon was infinitely quicker and more agile. Cunningly stealing up on Boholt from the left in order to obstruct his swing, it struck with a taloned foot. The horse reared up and lurched over to one side. Boholt flew from the saddle, losing his sword and helmet, tumbling backwards onto the ground, banging his head against a rock. "Run for it, lads! Up the hill!" Yarpen Zigrin bellowed, out-shouting the screams of Gar, who was pinned down by his horse. Beards fluttering, the dwarves dashed towards the rocks at a speed that belied their short legs. The dragon did not give chase. It sat calmly and looked around. Gar was thrashing and screaming beneath the horse. Boholt lay motionless. Beanpole was crawling towards the rocks, sideways, like a huge iron crab. "Staggering," Doragore whispered. "Staggering." "Hey!" Dandelion struggled in his bonds, making the wagon shake. "What is it? Over there! Look!" A great cloud of dust could be seen on the eastern side of the gorge, and shouting, rattling, and the tramping of hooves quickly reached them. The dragon extended its neck to look. 3 large wagons full of armed men rolled onto the plain. Splitting up, they began to surround the dragon. Damn it! It's the constabulary and guilds from Bearfield," Dandelion called. "They came around by the source of the Brer. Yes, it's them. Look, it's Sheepbagger, there at the front." The dragon lowered its head and gently pushed a small green-greyish mewling creature towards the wagon. Then it struck the ground with its tail, roared loudly, and shot like an arrow towards the encounter with the men of Bearfield. "What is it?" Yennefer asked. "That little thing crawling around in the grass, Geralt." "It's what the dragon was protecting from us," the Witcher said. "That's what hatched some time ago in the cave, over there in the northern canyon. It's the dragonling from the egg of the dragon that Sheepbagger poisoned." The dragonling, stumbling and dragging its bulging belly across the ground, scurried unsteadily over to the wagon, squealed, stood on its hind legs, stretched out its little wings, and then, without a second's thought, clung to the sorceress's side. Yennefer, with an extremely queer look on her face, sighed loudly. "It likes you," Geralt murmured. "He's young, but he ain't stupid." Dandelion, twisting in his fetters, grinned. "Look where he's stuck his snout. I'd like to be in his shoes, damn it. Hey, little one, run away. That's Yennefer, terror of dragons. And witches. Well, at least one witcher." "Quiet, Dandelion," Doragore shouted. "Look over there, on the battlefield. They've got him, a pox on them." The Bearfield wagons, rumbling like war chariots, raced towards the attacking dragon. "Smack him!" Sheepbagger yelled, hanging on to the wagoner's back. "Smack him, kinsman, anywhere and anyhow. Don't hold back." The dragon nimbly eluded the first advancing wagon,
flashing with scythe blades, forks and spears, but ended up between the next two, from which a huge double fishing net pulled by straps dropped onto it. The dragon, fully enmeshed, fell down, rolled over, curled up in a ball, and spread its legs. The net tore to shreds with a sharp rending noise. More nets were thrown onto it from the first wagon, which had managed to turn around, this time utterly entangling the dragon. The two other wagons also turned back, dashed towards the dragon, rattling and bouncing over bumps. "You're caught in the net, you carp!" Sheepbagger bawled, "and we'll soon scale you." The dragon roared and belched a cloud of steam into the sky. The Bearfield constables rushed towards him, spilling out of the wagons. The dragon bellowed again, desperately, with a thundering roar. From the northern canyon came a reply, a high-pitched battle cry. Out from the gorge, straining forward in a frenzied gallop, blonde plaits streaming, whistling piercingly, surrounded by the flickering flashes of sabres, charged the Zerrikanians, the Witcher shouted, helplessly tugging at the ropes. "Oh, shit," Dandelion chimed in. "Geralt, do you understand?" The Zerrikanians rode through the throng like hot knives through a barrel of butter, scattering their path with massacred corpses, and then leapt from their horses in full flight to stand beside the dragon struggling in the net. The first of the onrushing constables immediately lost his head. The second aimed a blow with his pitchfork at Via, but the Zerrikanian, holding her sabre in both hands upside down, with the tip pointing towards the ground, slashed him open from crotch to sternum. The others beat a hurried retreat. "To the wagons!" Sheepbagger yelled. "To the wagons, kinsman! We'll crush them into the wagons!" "Geralt!" Yennefer suddenly shouted, pulling up her bound legs and pushing them with a sudden thrust under the wagon, beneath the arms of the Witcher, which were bound and twisted behind him. "The Igni sign! Make it! Can you feel the rope? Cast the bloody thing!" "Without looking," Geralt groaned. "I'll burn you, Yen. Make the sign! I can take it!" He obeyed, and felt a tingling in his fingers, which were forming the Igni sign just above the sorceress's bound ankles. Yennefer turned her head away, biting down on her coat collar and stifling a moan. The dragonling, squealing, beat its wings beside her. "Yen, make it!" she bellowed. Her bonds gave way in an instant, as the disgusting, nauseating odour of charred skin became unbearable. Dorigere uttered a strange noise and fainted, suspended by his fetters from the wagon wheel. The sorceress, wincing with the pain, straightened up, lifting her now free leg. She screamed in a furious voice, full of pain and rage. The medallion on Geralt's neck jerked as though it were alive. Yennefer straightened her thigh, waved her foot towards the charging wagons of the Bearfield Constabulary, and shouted out a spell. The air crackled and gave off the smell of ozone. "Oh, ye gods!" Dandelion wailed in admiration. "What a ballad this will be, Yennefer!" The spell, cast by her shapely little foot, was not totally effective. The first wagon, and everything on it, took on the yellow colour of a kingcup, which the Bearfield soldiers, in the frenzy of battle, did not even notice. It did better with the second wagon, whose entire crew were transformed into huge, rough-skinned frogs, which hopped around in all directions, croaking comically. The wagon, now bereft of a driver, tipped over and fell apart. The horses, neighing hysterically, fled into the distance, dragging the broken shaft behind them. Yennefer bit her lip and waved her leg in the air again. The Kingcup Yellow wagon suddenly dissolved into Kingcup Yellow smoke, to the sound of lively musical tones drifting down from above, and its entire crew flopped onto the grass, stupefied, forming a picturesque heap. The wheels of the third wagon went from round to square, and the result was instant. The horses reared up, the wagon crashed over, and the Bearfield Constabulary were tipped out and thrown onto the ground. Yennefer, now driven by pure vindictiveness, flourished a leg ferociously and yelled out a spell, transforming the Bearfielders randomly into turtles, geese, woodlice, flamingos, and stripy piglets. The Zerrikanians, expertly and methodically, finished off the rest. The dragon, having finally torn the nets to shreds, leapt up, flapped its wings, roared and hurtled, as straight as a ramrod, after the unharmed and fleeing Sheepbagger. Sheepbagger was dashing like a stag, but the dragon was faster. Geralt, seeing the gaping jaws and razor-sharp flashing teeth, turned his head away. He heard a gruesome scream and a revolting crunching sound. Dandelion gave a stifled shout. Yennefer, her face as white as a sheet, bent over double, turned to one side and vomited under the wagon. A silence fell, interrupted only by the occasional gaggling, croaking and squealing of the remains of the Bearfield constabulary. Vere, smiling unpleasantly, stood over Yennefer, legs wide apart. The Zerrikanian raised her sabre. Yennefer, pale, raised a leg. "No," said Borch, also known as Three Jackdaws, who was sitting on a stone. In his lap, he was holding the dragonling, peaceful and content. "We aren't going to kill Madame Yennefer," the dragon Tenmirth repeated. "It is over. What is more, we are grateful to Madame Yennefer for her invaluable assistance. Release them, Vere." "Do you understand, Geralt?" Dandelion whispered, chafing feeling back into his numb arms. "Do you understand? There's an ancient ballad about a golden dragon. A golden dragon can assume any form it wishes," Geralt muttered. "Even that of a human. I've heard that too, but I didn't believe it." "Yapin Zigrin, sir," Tenmirth called to the dwarf, who was hanging onto a vertical rock 20 ells above the ground. "What are you looking for there? Marmots? Not your favourite dish, if memory serves me. Climb down and busy yourself with the reavers. They need help. There won't be any more killing. Of anybody." Dandelion, casting anxious glances at the Zerrikanians, who were vigilantly patrolling the battlefield, was still trying to revive the unconscious Dorigere. Geralt was dressing Yennefer's scorched ankles and rubbing ointment into them. The sorceress was hissing with pain and mumbling spells. Having completed his task, the Witcher stood up. "Stay here," he said. "I have to talk to him." Yennefer stood up, wincing. "I'm going with you, Geralt," she said, linking her arm in his. "May I? Please, Geralt?" "With me, Yen? I thought—" "Don't think." She pressed herself against his arm. "Yen?" "It's all right, Geralt." He looked into her eyes, which were warm, as they used to be. He lowered his head and kissed her lips, hot, soft, and willing, as they used to be. They walked over. Yennefer, held up by Geralt, curtsied low, as though before a king, holding her dress in her fingertips. "Three Jack... Tenmirth," the Witcher said. "My name, when freely translated into your language, means 3 black birds," the dragon said. The dragonling, little claws digging into his forearm, arched its back to be stroked. "Chaos and order." Tenmirth smiled. "Do you remember, Geralt? Chaos is aggression, order its protection against it. It's worth rushing to the ends of the world to oppose aggression and evil, isn't it, Witcher? Particularly, as you said, when the pay is fair. And this time it was. It was the treasure hoard of the she-dragon Mirgtabracca, the one poisoned outside Bearfield. She summoned me to help her, to stop the evil threatening her. Mirgtabracca flew away soon after Ike de Nesle was removed from the battlefield. She had sufficient time while you were talking and quarrelling. But she left me her treasure as my payment." The dragonling squealed and flapped its little wings. "So you—" "That is right," the dragon interrupted. "Well, it's the times we live in. For some time, creatures, which you usually call monsters, have been feeling more and more under threat from people. They can no longer cope by themselves. They need a defender, some kind of Witcher." "And the destination? The goal at the end of the road?" "This is it." Tenmirth lifted his forearm. The dragonling squealed in alarm. "I've just attained it. Owing to him, I shall survive, Geralt of Rivia. I shall prove there are no limits of possibility. One day, you will also find such a purpose, Witcher. even those who are different can survive. Farewell, Geralt. Farewell, Yennefer. The sorceress, grasping the witch's arm more firmly, curtsied again. Entretenmeth stood up and looked at her, and his expression was very serious. Forgive me my frankness and forthrightness, Yennefer. It is written all over your faces. I don't even have to try to read your thoughts. You were made for each other, you and the Witcher. But nothing will come of it. Nothing. I'm sorry. I know. Yennefer blanched slightly. I know, Entretenmeth. But I would also like to believe there are no limits of possibility. Or at least I would like to believe that they are still very far away. Rivia walked over, touched Geralt's shoulder, and quickly uttered a few words. The dragon laughed. Geralt, Rivia says she will long remember the tub at the Pensive Dragon. She hopes we'll meet again some day. What? Yennefer answered, narrowing her eyes. Nothing, the Witcher said quickly. Entretenmeth. Yes, Geralt of Rivia? You can assume any form, any that you wish. Indeed. Why then a man? Why Borch with 3 black birds on his coat of arms? The dragon smiled cheerfully. I don't know, Geralt, in what circumstances the distant ancestors of our races encountered one another for the first time, but the fact is that for dragons there is nothing more repugnant than man. Man arouses instinctive, irrational disgust in a dragon. With me, it's different. To me, you're likeable. Farewell. It was not a gradual, blurred transformation, or a hazy, pulsating trembling as with an illusion. It was as sudden as the blink of an eye. Where a second before had stood a curly-haired knight in a tunic decorated with 3 black birds, now sat a golden dragon, gracefully extending its long, slender neck. Inclining its head, the dragon spread its wings, dazzlingly gold in the sunshine. Yennefer sighed loudly. Rivia, already mounted beside Tyr, waved. Rivia, the Witcher said. You were right. Hmm? He is the most beautiful.